What is true divine mercy? Let's dive right into a cosmic concept that'll totally reshape how you view reality.
It's the ultimate paradox, right? If a creator is infinitely merciful, why on earth do devastating disasters happen? To figure this out, we gotta define Er-Rahman, the absolute, infinite source of all divine mercy.
But this mercy isn't just some warm feeling, it's literally the gravitational pull of the entire universe.
Without this exact cosmic attraction, electrons scatter, moons drift away, and even our blood just stops flowing.
The catch? We mistakenly project our own conditional, human empathy onto God's totally unconditional, creative mercy.
See the difference? Rahim applies universally to absolutely everything, while Rahim is a specific, conditional kind of mercy.
This means true divine mercy is literally the act of pulling existence right out of absolute nothingness.
So, if this mercy is reality's foundation, it has to encompass absolutely everything we experience, no exceptions. But wait, how exactly do pain, illness, or massive natural disasters fit into this perfect picture?
Here's the crazy paradigm shift. Nothing is created inherently evil in its essence. The real issue? Misuse.
Take earthquakes. They're actually a planetary pressure valve preventing Earth from exploding while also revitalizing our soil.
The real tragedy isn't the tectonic shift itself. It's human error, like building concrete cities on fault lines.
Even a terrifying venomous snake serves a merciful purpose. It acts as an ecological filter, extracting deadly toxins. Every single thing exists bil-haq, designed with absolute truth, profound meaning, and a totally indispensable ecological purpose.
We suffer because we obsess over one isolated part, completely missing how the creator orchestrates the whole survival. So next time the world feels chaotic, ask yourself, are you obsessing over the part or trusting the whole?
Let's jump right into a really profound philosophical journey. Today, we're exploring the true nature of divine mercy. It brings up the ultimate question, right? If a creator is infinitely merciful, why does suffering even exist? Well, it starts with Er-Rahman. That's an absolute mercy so powerful, it literally creates existence out of nothingness. Now, notice the contrast with Er-Rahim. That one is a variable, conditional mercy based on specific actions. See, human mercy reacts and expects a return. But divine mercy, it's an absolute originating force of pure love. Imagine this, just one single fraction of that divine mercy was distributed to our entire physical universe. That single fraction is literally why any compassion exists. It's why a mother loves and nurses her newborn. Crazy, right? Think about the scale. The remaining 99 parts stay entirely with the creator. So, this mercy actually acts like a cosmic gravity, keeping the physical and spiritual universe from falling apart. From microscopic electrons orbiting to massive planets, this divine attraction sustains absolutely everything around us. So let's address the elephant in the room. If mercy is everywhere, why do destructive earthquakes happen? The text argues that this mercy literally encompasses and redefines everything, even things that seem entirely destructive. It actually says, earthquakes are a mercy. Without that pressure release valve, the earth would just explode. So what about evil? Well, it suggests that bad things are circumstantial, never an inherent trait. Everything has a purpose. Misery only really happens when creations are used against their naturally designed harmony. Because we have free will, we make mistakes. That makes us the absolute greatest recipients of this mercy. We can actually tap into this cosmic force through prayer. It's really the true brain of worship. Check out the spiritual progression. We move from realizing our vulnerability to directly asking for divine connection. Ultimately, realizing you need the creator way more than the creation itself, now that is true prayer. So, if an infinite cosmic mercy is already sustaining your existence, what are you going to ask for today?
Okay, let's just jump right in, because today we're going to completely transform how we understand a concept that is literally thousands of years old. When you hear the word mercy, you probably think of a feeling, right? Like pity or compassion, or maybe someone just being let off the hook for a mistake. But what if I told you that in ancient, divine terms, mercy isn't just an emotion at all? What if it is actually the fundamental, structural physics of the universe? Today, we're decoding the concept of Er-Rahman, which usually just gets translated as the merciful. But as you'll see, translating it as just an emotion is kind of like calling the entire ocean a puddle. We're not talking about a feeling here. We are looking at the cosmic operating system itself.
All right, let's dive into this because we've got to confront the elephant in the room right off the bat. It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? If the universe was truly created by an entity that is the absolute, infinite source of mercy, why does our world look the way it does? I mean, why are there catastrophic earthquakes? Why are there massive floods? Why does nature have venomous snakes and scavenging animals? It's the oldest question in the book. How can a supposedly merciful universe contain so much apparent suffering, danger, and destruction? Well, to figure that out, we first have to realize that our basic definition of the word mercy is totally flawed, mostly because we're projecting our own human limitations onto something much, much bigger.
You see, when we think of mercy, we naturally just think of human mercy. And human mercy, as beautiful as it absolutely is inherently reactive, and honestly, it's a little bit transactional. Our mercy gets triggered when we see someone powerless, someone in need, right? Our conscience gets pulled toward them. But underneath that empathy is actually often this subtle hidden fear. We're thinking, man, one day this could happen to me. I'd want someone to share my pain if I'm suffering, so I should probably share theirs right now. Or sometimes we show mercy expecting a reward, like spiritual points, social praise, maybe just a favor down the line. The point is, human mercy requires a suffering subject to even exist, and there's almost always a slight expectation attached to it.
So let's completely redefine this. Consider the ancient concept of kazibe, which translates to attraction, pull, or even gravity. Mercy, in its absolute purest, divine form, is this cosmic pull. It's the gravitational force that keeps reality from literally disintegrating. Just think about it. The electron orbits the nucleus of an atom because of this pull. The moon orbits the Earth orbits the sun, all because of this gravitational attraction. Even the blood circulating in your veins, orbiting your heart, relies on this exact principle. Divine mercy is not just a feeling of pity, it is the physical and spiritual gravity, the kazibe, that binds every single particle of existence together. Without it, matter itself couldn't even stand. The whole shebang would just fall apart.
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive distinction between two terms that get confused all the time: Er-Rahman and Er-Rahim. Now, while they both share the same root word, they operate in completely different ways. Er-Rahman is absolute. It's static. It's directed at the very essence of creation itself. It is this general, overarching mercy that falls on everything: the rose and the thorn, the predator and the prey, the righteous and the wicked. Think of it like the sun shining on everyone, indiscriminately. Rahim, on the other hand, is dynamic and specific. That's a targeted, extra layer of mercy directed specifically toward those who actively seek it and align themselves with it. But for this explainer, our focus is on that vast, unconditional umbrella, Ar-Rahman.
To truly grasp the insane scale of Er-Rahman, we really have to look at the linguistic math built into the ancient Arabic word itself. It's fascinating. The word ends with a dual suffix, elif nun. Now, in Arabic grammar, this suffix usually denotes a pair, like two of something. But when it's applied to this specific intensive structure, it acts as an infinite loop that pretty much breaks human comprehension. The grammar literally commands you, okay, imagine the greatest mercy you can possibly conceive. Got it? Now multiply it by 2. But wait, since you just conceived of that new, larger mercy, that is now your baseline, so you have to multiply that by 2. And again, forever. It is literally a mathematical formula for infinity, embedded right into the language, proving that the borders of this cosmic mercy cannot be calculated.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this radical difference between us and the Creator. Like we talked about earlier, human mercy absolutely requires a target. For you to feel merciful, there has to be someone or something suffering right in front of you. But God's mercy, Ar-Rahman, needs no target at all. It looks at the absolute empty void of nothingness and gives it existence. God's mercy doesn't just come in to soothe the suffering. It creates reality out of pure grace. Think of it this way. We love things because they exist. The divine loves things and therefore they exist. The fact that anything exists at all is the very first act of this infinite mercy.
But how does this immense, mind-bending cosmic mercy actually interact with our daily human lives? We'll take the famous historical scholar Abdullah bin Mubarak. He was traveling with a huge caravan to perform the Hajj pilgrimage, which is a massive, incredibly expensive, and deeply important spiritual journey. But on the way, he witnessed a young orphan girl sneaking out to scavenge a dead bird from the road, literally just to feed her starving siblings. Upon seeing this, he didn't just feel bad for her and move on. No,
He immediately canceled his entire pilgrimage. He took all the money he had saved for that huge journey and gave it directly to those orphans, declaring that feeding them was the true Hajj. This right here is the absolute peak of human empathy, when the gravity of divine mercy pulls a human heart so strongly that it just completely overrides all other plans.
Now, let's take everything we've just learned and revisit that really tough question from the beginning. If existence is held together by infinite mercy, what is the deal with natural disasters and scary animals? We really have to reevaluate what we call evil. Take earthquakes, for instance. Without tectonic plates releasing stress, the Earth would literally build up pressure and explode like a balloon. Earthquakes are the Earth's necessary pressure valve, a harsh, yes, but vital mechanism to keep the planet alive. And floods? They are the Earth's harsh but necessary way of washing and purifying itself. What about venomous snakes? Actually, they extract and balance toxins within the entire ecosystem. Scavenging animals? They're nature's indispensable environmental cleaners. What we perceive as bad or destructive in the short term is, on a massive cosmic scale, a structural necessity. It's literally mercy disguised as hardship, ensuring the survival of the whole system.
Okay, which leads us to one of the most radical ideas presented in this entire explainer, the concept of divine punishment. Because if mercy encompasses absolutely everything, how on earth can a concept like hell or divine wrath even exist? Well, within this framework, even divine punishment is merely a subset of mercy. You can think of it as a spiritual intensive care unit. When a soul becomes so deeply sick, so utterly corrupted that it simply cannot heal in this world, it's placed in the intensive care unit of the next. The treatment might be agonizing, just like a really harsh, invasive medical intervention, but the ultimate goal is purification and healing. Even in the absolute darkest places, the operating system of mercy is still running in the background.
So, how does this actually change our everyday lives? Let's talk about the concept of dua or prayer. The Creator wants to give. The Creator is infinitely merciful. So, what's the problem? Well, the problem is us. We either forget to ask or, more often than not, we ask for the completely wrong things. We are basically like children demanding chocolate for dinner when what we actually need is a nutritious meal. We constantly ask for short-term comfort instead of long-term growth. True prayer isn't about handing the universe a shopping list. It's about aligning our own will with that cosmic gravity we talked about earlier. When we finally learn to ask for the right things, like guidance and connection, we allow that infinite mercy to flow directly into our lives.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. We spend so much of our lives stressed out, feeling victimized by circumstances, constantly judging situations as purely good or definitively bad. But as this explainer has shown, our vision is just incredibly limited. We are staring super close at a single isolated pixel, while the universe is operating on the scale of a giant masterpiece painting. So I want to leave you with this lingering question to hopefully help reframe your own daily struggles. Could there be a mercy you simply cannot yet see behind every single hardship you witness? Because if the cosmic operating system is truly built on infinite structural mercy, then even in our very darkest moments, we are being held. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and hey, try to look for the hidden mercy in the world around you today.
Imagine the absolute ultimate force holding the universe together. Like if you ask a physicist why you don't just float off your chair right now, they're going to point to gravity.
Right, or electromagnetism keeping your atoms from flying apart.
Exactly. We rely on these cold mathematical constants, We find a lot of comfort in the idea that the universe is governed by these unfeeling, purely structural laws. But stepping into the philosophical and theological framework we are diving into today, it completely flips that mechanical view of the cosmos entirely on its head.
It really does. It's a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah. I'm your host, and joined by our resident expert, as always, we are going on a deep dive today into something truly mind-bending. What if the literal engine of creation, the reason tectonic plates shift, the reason electrons orbit a nucleus, and the reason you wake up in the morning is actually mercy?
It's wild when you say it out loud, because we're elevating a concept that we normally treat as this soft, reactionary human emotion to the status of a fundamental cosmic force.
Right, we're moving from physics to spiritual mechanics.
Exactly. And the foundation of this exploration is this really extensive theological analysis of a single Arabic term. The word is Er-Rahman.
Which, in the Islamic tradition, is one of the primary names of the divine.
Right. It's typically translated into English as the infinitely compassionate or the infinitely merciful. But, looking at it purely as a religious translation really misses the immense philosophical weight behind the word itself.
Honestly, that translation feels almost too small for the scope of what we're dealing with here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in this deep dive, we are essentially deconstructing the psychology of human empathy, right? We're analyzing the linguistic mathematics of infinity, and we're tackling the problem of evil head-on.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But if we're going to fundamentally redefine tragedy, hardship, and the literal ground you walk on, we have to start with a structural problem. Because human brains are localized. We are finite.
Right, we think in terms of beginnings, middles, and ends.
Exactly. So grasping an infinite concept like absolute cosmic mercy just seems biologically impossible for us. Where do we even start?
Well, the text insists that attempting to comprehend the infinite directly is just a fast track to cognitive overload.
Like trying to stare at the sun.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Staring directly into the core of the sun will only result in blindness. You don't learn anything about light that way. So to understand a transcendent reality, you can't start outside of yourself.
You have to start with the immanent, the immediate human experience.
Right, and work your way outward. There's this really striking visual metaphor used in the source material to describe this process. It's the concept of guk ipi, or rope sent down from heaven.
I really love that image. So instead of expecting a human being to just leap into the stratosphere of divine comprehension, these linguistic and conceptual names are dropped down into our atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
We take hold of a concept we think we understand, like mercy, for example, and we use it as a rope to climb toward a much larger, basically incomprehensible reality.
And climbing that specific rope really begins with the etymology of the word itself. In Arabic, the root triconsonantal structure for mercy is RHM, and that is inextricably tied to the word for womb, which is Ram.
Wow. Grounding an abstract cosmic principle in the biology of a womb immediately changes the entire texture of the conversation.
It really does. It moves mercy away from just being a feeling of pity.
Right, it turns it into an environment. Because if you think about it, a womb is a structural space designed entirely for the nourishment, protection, and miraculous development of something that cannot sustain itself.
It's the ultimate environment of unearned grace.
Yeah.
I mean, the entity inside the womb hasn't done anything to deserve the oxygen, the nutrients, or the protection it receives. It's just given.
It just exists and receives.
Right, and this linguistic connection extends deeply into the natural world as well. In traditional Arabic and Turkish cultures, precipitation rain is frequently referred to as rahmet, which is the exact same root word for mercy.
So water falling from the sky isn't just some meteorological event. It's the earth receiving the womb-like nourishment it needs to produce life.
Exactly. It's structural.
And that brings us to this defining concept of kazi, right? Let me make sure I'm understanding this framework. Kazibe translates to attraction or a gravitational pull.
Yes, that's correct.
And this is presented as the actual secret of existence.
It is. Kazibi is the mechanism through which this mercy operates. The argument essentially posits that without this foundational attraction, matter would just dissolve into nothingness.
That is wild.
I mean, there's no logical reason for a universe to exist rather than not exist, save for an active drawing force pulling nothingness into being.
Okay, applying a physics analogy here makes this incredibly concrete for me.
Go for it.
Gravity is the physical expression of Kazi on a macro scale, right? It keeps the moon locked in this delicate, life-sustaining dance with the Earth rather than just spinning off into the freezing void.
Right, exactly.
And then electromagnetism is the physical expression on a micro scale. It keeps the electron bound to the proton. So spiritual kazib, this gravitational mercy, is the force keeping human consciousness bound to meaning and purpose.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
It prevents us from dissolving into absolute nihilism.
Right.
And that scales perfectly to human behavior too. We often attribute our daily actions to discipline or, necessity. But underlying those things is a profound invisible pull.
What's an example of that?
Well, consider the person who abandons a warm, comfortable bed at 5 a.m. every single day for decades to perform morning prayers.
Ugh. The ultimate struggle.
Right. If that were merely a transactional obligation, the human willpower would eventually fatigue. I mean, the friction of daily life would just wear it down.
Yeah, you just hit snooze eventually.
Exactly. But they continue because of Kazib. They are caught in the gravitational orbit of that divine mercy.
Oh, wow. You see the same mechanism in how human beings attach to geography, too. Like, someone can possess this fierce, completely irrational love for a harsh, barren stretch of desert or a freezing, desolate tundra.
Right, places where it makes no logical sense to want to live.
Exactly. Objectively, the land offers no material comfort, there are no lush resources, yet they are bound to it. They call it home.
That inexplicable gravity operating in the human heart isn't just sentimentality, it's the micro-expression of the macro force holding the galaxy together.
Okay, so we're establishing mercy as the load-bearing pillar of reality here. But doing so creates an immediate point of friction, doesn't it?
It does.
Because if cosmic mercy is this active, generative engine, we really have to look very critically at our own human version of mercy.
Yeah, and it's not a flattering comparison. The Arabic terms used for human empathy are riqat, which denotes a softening of the heart, or titaf, which means sharing in someone's pain.
And both of those human experiences share a glaring structural limitation, right? They are entirely reactionary. For me to feel empathy or mercy, someone else has to be bleeding. I have to witness a tragedy, a victim, or some state of deprivation. The stimulus of suffering has to occur before my mercy can activate.
Yes. But the reactionary nature of human empathy is just the surface limitation. The deeper psychological reality presented in the text is that human mercy is heavily entangled with self-preservation.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go ahead.
Because framing human empathy as fundamentally selfish feels overly cynical to me. If I see a stranger drowning in a river and I dive in, risking my own life to pull them out, I'm certainly not running a cost-benefit analysis in my head.
Sure, of course not.
Right, I'm not thinking about a reward or how this benefits my social standing. It is a visceral drive to preserve life.
And that visceral drive is undeniably powerful, and we celebrate it culturally, as we should. But dissecting why that drive exists reveals the underlying projection.
What do you mean by projection?
The subconscious mind observes the drowning person and instantly mirrors the terror. The internal narrative is, that could be me. We share in the pain because we fear the pain.
Oh.
Yeah, we leap into the river to extinguish the terrifying reflection of our own potential demise.
So the empathy is basically a defense mechanism. I am saving them to soothe the psychological distress their suffering causes in me.
Partially, yes. Or we engage in empathy as a form of social insurance.
Like I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We assist the vulnerable so that, should we ever become vulnerable, the social contract dictates we will be assisted in return.
That makes sense, yeah.
And even when you strip away societal expectations, human mercy often fulfills a profound internal need for validation, the desire to view oneself as a good person. There's almost always a transactional element, a shadow of the ego lurking behind human compassion.
Man, that is tough to hear, but it makes sense. And contrasting that with the concept of Er-Rahman creates a massive ontological gap.
But a huge one.
Because if human mercy requires a victim and a subconscious motive of self-preservation, divine mercy must be completely devoid of those constraints. God doesn't fear future suffering.
Right. God doesn't need to reinforce a self-image or secure a social safety net.
Therefore, divine mercy is not a reaction to pain at all. It doesn't even require a universe to react to.
Exactly. The defining philosophical statement here on the text is this. The divine looked at nothingness with mercy, and it became existence.
See, that completely inverts how we understand the sequence of creation. Human beings value things because they exist.
Give me an example.
Okay, like, I see a beautiful painting, right? I recognize its existence, and then I assign it value and affection. But the mechanic of Er-Rahman operates in reverse.
Right, the mercy precedes the existence.
Exactly. It's the active force that causes a thing to step out of the void and into reality. The mercy is the cause. The existence is just the byproduct.
Which perfectly dismantles a prominent modern philosophical critique of mercy. Thinkers like Nietzsche argued that pity is inherently toxic.
Toxic? How so?
The argument is that showing mercy to someone establishes a hierarchy. The merciful person is in a position of power, looking down upon the pathetic, weak recipient. Pity, in this view, demeans the sufferer and inflates the ego of the savior.
You know, if human mercy is disconnected from its divine root and driven purely by ego, I can actually see how it curdles into condescension.
Oh, it definitely can.
But applying that logic to a pure, non-reactionary mercy just doesn't hold up. I mean, the ultimate counterexample from the text is a mother nursing her newborn infant.
Yes, exactly.
When she looks at this entirely helpless, dependent creature, she isn't establishing a toxic power dynamic.
She isn't looking down on the infant with arrogant pity, right? The act of maternal mercy is an act of supreme elevation. She is valuing the infant's life above her own.
Pure mercy never demeans. It places infinite worth on the recipient.
Exactly. And when we extrapolate that to the ultimate scale, cosmic mercy isn't some condescending pat on the head to fragile human beings.
Yeah.
It is the force that assigns us inherent, unshakable value simply by pulling us into existence.
That is incredibly profound. Okay, so we've established the scale and the generative nature of this force. Now we have to grapple with the linguistics.
Right, the nuts and bolts of the word itself.
Because how did the ancient Arabic language construct a single word to encapsulate a concept that mathematically shatters human comprehension? This brings us to the famous pairing of names, Er-Rahman and Er-Rahim.
These two names are almost always paired together. Most prominently, you see them in the Bismillah, which is the foundational phrase in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. It precedes nearly every chapter of the Quran.
Right.
And over the centuries, some linguists have suggested that these words are essentially synonyms, just a stylistic repetition for emphasis.
But the morphological rules of Arabic don't really allow for empty repetition, do they?
No, they don't. The architecture of the language dictates that a change in structural form necessitates a distinct change in meaning. They are built from the exact same root, RHM, but they are cast into entirely different grammatical molds.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. The mold for Rahman creates an adjective denoting a permanent, unalterable essence. It is the static, absolute state of being.
Okay.
The mold for Rahim, conversely, creates an active participle. It denotes a dynamic, specific manifestation or action.
So if we use a physics analogy again, let's use the sun. Rahman is the nuclear furnace at the core of the star. It is the nature of the star itself, burning constantly regardless of what is happening in the solar system.
That's a great visualization.
And Rahim is the specific photon of light that travels through the vacuum of space and warms a specific blade of grass on Earth. One is the absolute state, the other is the targeted delivery.
That perfectly captures it. And the absolute nature of Rahman is proven by its grammatical uniqueness in the text itself. In the 17th chapter of the Quran, verse 110, Rahman is positioned as the sole attribute that is completely interchangeable with the proper name Allah.
Oh wait, really? The only one?
Yes. The verse essentially says, call upon Allah, or call upon Iran, whichever you call. The best names belong to him. None of the other traditional 99 names function with that level of absolute synonymy.
That is fascinating. Furthermore, Rahman defies standard linguistic pluralization, right? Like you cannot make the word plural.
No, you can't. It possesses no dual form. It accepts no prepositions. It stands as an impenetrable monolithic concept.
But within the construction of the word itself lies this fascinating mathematical engine, the suffix ilif nun.
This is where it gets really wild. To understand the gravity of the elif nun suffix, we have to look at how Arabic categorizes quantity.
Okay.
In English, we have singular and plural, one car or two or more cars. Arabic introduces a highly specific middle tier, the dual form. The addition of the an sound, the elif nun, to the end of a noun explicitly means two of that item, before moving to a completely different structural pattern for three or more.
But the root word ram isn't just given a standard dual ending here, is it?
No. It is first placed into a specific grammatical template designed to indicate extreme exaggeration, the absolute maximum capacity of a concept.
Wow.
And then it is capped with this elif nun dual marker. The resulting mathematical equation is just staggering.
It acts as a recursive algorithm for the human imagination. I love how you explained this earlier. The word basically instructs the mind to conceive of the absolute maximum volume of mercy possible.
Right. You stretch your mind to the absolute limit. You imagine a mercy that encompasses the entire galaxy.
And once you have established that absolute maximum, the elif nun suffix engages. It demands that you multiply that maximum concept by 2.
But the more you multiply by 2, you have just conceived of a new maximum.
Right, and because the grammatical rule of the word is to double the maximum, the rule instantly triggers, again, you have to double the new total.
And then double that.
It's like compound interest, but infinite. It is a linguistic geometric progression that never resolves. It forces the human brain into an infinite loop, deliberately short-circuiting our ability to put a boundary around the concept.
This is not merely a clever structural trick either. It serves a vital psychological and spiritual function. The geometric expansion, encoded in the word Rahman, is designed to utterly annihilate both human despair and human arrogance.
No, that's interesting because we usually view despair and arrogance as opposites, don't we? Despair is crushing low self-worth, and arrogance is an inflated ego. How does this mathematical infinity target both simultaneously?
Well, in this theological framework, extreme despair is actually a mask for extreme arrogance.
Okay, unpack that.
Consider an individual who falls into deep spiritual depression. They claim, I have committed unspeakable acts. My flaws are too deep. My sins are too vast. Not even God could forgive what I have done.
On the surface, that sounds like profound humility. They are acknowledging their wretchedness.
Exactly, on the surface. But beneath the surface, it is a statement of staggering cosmic ego.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
By claiming their sins are beyond forgiveness, they are subconsciously asserting that their finite, temporal, human mistakes possess a greater volume than the infinite, geometrically expanding, unalterable essence of the universe's foundational mercy.
Wow. That completely exposes the ego in despair. The individual is essentially saying, my ability to destroy is more powerful than the fabric of reality's ability to heal.
Yes, and the linguistic structure of Rahman functions as a direct confrontation to that. It asks, do you truly believe your localized human failure can outscale an algorithm of infinity?
It demands that you surrender the illusion of your own magnitude, whether that magnitude is framed as righteousness or as sin.
Exactly, which naturally leads us to the distribution mechanics of this infinite essence.
Right, because if Rahman is this universal, unyielding force, how does it actually interact with a world populated by flawed, destructive, and frankly, deeply unjust human beings?
Well, the philosophical stance here is that Rahman is unequivocally universal. It is not an exclusive club for the pious.
And the universal application of Rahman is honestly one of the most challenging aspects of this framework for people who demand strict, immediate justice.
Oh, absolutely.
The premise asserts that this foundational mercy falls equally on the wolf and the lamb. It nourishes the rose, but it also sustains the thorn. It provided oxygen to Moses, and it provided the exact same oxygen to the tyrant Pharaoh.
It sustains the murderer Cain with the exact same biological precision as it sustains his victim, Abel. Rahman is the baseline operating system of reality.
It's just the physics of it.
Right. The sun does not withhold its photon energy from a dictator's crops. Gravity doesn't cease to function for a criminal. The sheer existence and biological sustenance of every entity, regardless of their moral alignment, is the active proof of Rahman.
So, if Rahman is the baseline that everyone receives just by virtue of existing, then Rahim, the active, targeted manifestation, that must be the differentiating factor. Rahim is the specific intervention.
Correct. Rahman is the gravitational field holding everyone to the planet. Rahim is the specific rope lowered down a well to pull someone out of the dark.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Rahim is the targeted grace reserved for those who actively seek alignment with it. And navigating the space between the universal given and the targeted grace requires two psychological states, iftikhar and iftihar.
Okay, let's break those down. Iftikhar translates to a state of profound existential poverty. But this isn't about lacking money in a bank account, is it?
No, not at all. It is the intellectual realization that you do not own your own existence. You didn't author your own consciousness. Your lungs breathe, and your heart beats on borrowed power.
It's looking into the vastness of that infinite geometric loop we talked about and admitting an absolute, unvarnished dependence.
Yes, and once an individual truly internalizes that state of iftikhar, that absolute zero point of need, the natural emotional response to receiving anything at all is iftihar.
Which is what, exactly?
Iftihar is a soaring, overwhelming sense of humble pride and gratitude. You realize, I am owed nothing by the cosmos, I am entirely dependent, yet I have been gifted consciousness, breath, and the capacity to love.
To move these abstract mechanics of universal and targeted grace into the realm of human action, we really need to look at the story of Abdullah bin Mubarak. This historical account from the text perfectly bridges the gap between theology and actionable reality.
It's a powerful story. Abdullah was a highly prominent, deeply respected Islamic scholar and ascetic in the 8th century, and crucially a man of immense wealth and influence.
His wealth and status are so crucial to the stakes of this narrative. Set the scene for us. He is organizing a caravan for the Hajj, right? The major pilgrimage to Mecca.
Right. And in this era, funding a Hajj caravan wasn't just buying a plane ticket. It involved provisioning camels, hiring guards, carrying massive amounts of gold and silver for expenses and trade.
He was basically taking responsibility for the lives of dozens of students and companions over months of grueling desert travel. It's a massive undertaking.
Exactly. So the caravan halts for the night, establishing a camp. And in the early hours of the morning, before sunrise, Abdullah observes a shadowy figure.
A young girl, right.
Yes. She's creeping out of a dilapidated, ruined structure on the outskirts of the camp. She is highly vigilant, scanning the area to ensure she's unseen. She darts into the road, snatches something off the ground, and quickly retreats into the ruins.
So his curiosity is piqued. Abdullah instructs his servant to quietly investigate the ruins and uncover what the girl is doing, and the servant returns, deeply shaken, and reports a scene of absolute devastation.
The ruined house contains a group of emaciated, starving children huddled around a small fire.
And what the girl had scavenged from the dirt road, and this is so brutal, was the rotting carcass of a dead bird. She was preparing to boil carrion to feed her siblings.
Yes. And when the servant confronts her, the sheer desperation of her reality is laid bare. She explains that they are orphans, utterly abandoned by society. They have endured days without a single morsel of food.
Under normal religious law, consuming carrion is strictly forbidden, right? It's a severe violation.
Absolutely. But the law of survival, the law of preserving life, overrides the dietary restriction. She was hiding because the shame of their abject poverty and the taboo of eating a dead animal was just too great to bear publicly.
This is the inflection point for Abdullah bin Mubarak. He is faced with a massive collision of values. He's on a highly public, immensely expensive, religiously mandated journey to the holiest site in his worldview.
Right. To turn back would involve massive financial loss, social confusion, and the abandonment of a major religious pillar.
But his understanding of Rahman overrides all of that. He immediately commands his servant to calculate the absolute bare minimum amount of coin required to safely return the caravan to their starting point.
And then every single remaining coin, jewel, and provision, a staggering fortune meant to sustain a small army for months, is handed over to the orphans.
Wow. And then he issues the order that just shocks his companions. The pilgrimage is canceled, they turn the caravan around and travel home. He abandons the ritual to address the immediate suffering.
And the epilogue to the story is what elevates it from a tale of charity to a masterclass in cosmic mechanics.
Right, because months later, the other caravans that did complete the arduous journey to Mecca returned to the city.
Yes, and the pilgrims greet Abdullah with great enthusiasm. They're recounting how wonderful it was to see him performing the rituals around the Kaaba, praying alongside them.
But Abdullah is completely bewildered, having never left his hometown.
Exactly. The theological tradition concludes that because his act of sacrificing the ritual for the sake of immediate, life-saving mercy was so perfectly aligned with the essence of Er-Rahman, divine proxies, angels in his likeness, were manifested to complete the physical pilgrimage on his behalf.
That is just incredible. The profound lesson here relies on the Turkish concept of lütuf, right? Which we can translate as actionable grace.
Yes, actionable grace. The universe operates on the active distribution of mercy. If a human being claims to understand or worship this infinite mercy, yet hoards their capability, wealth, or energy when faced with immediate, desperate need, their understanding is entirely theoretical.
And therefore hollow.
Exactly. Abdullah bin Mubarak recognized that circumambulating a stone structure was a ritual, but rescuing starving children, that was plugging directly into the active engine of the cosmos.
This story so perfectly establishes the necessity of human action, but it also raises a massive philosophical dilemma about the nature of asking for divine intervention.
It does, yes.
Because if the baseline operating system of the universe is infinite, universal mercy, if the sun is going to shine, the lungs are going to breathe, and existence is going to be sustained regardless of our input, why do we need to ask for anything? What is the actual function of prayer?
It's the most natural, logical hurdle in this framework. The core principle is summarized with a striking paradox from the lecture. Rahman gives to those who ask. Rahim is angered by those who don't ask.
Okay, hold on. Why would a perfectly merciful entity experience anger at a lack of petition? That feels inherently contradictory.
Well, the anger in this context is not a volatile human emotion. It represents the structural rejection of arrogance and distance. By refusing to ask, the human being is asserting an illusion of absolute independence.
They are rejecting the reality of iftikhar, their inherent existential poverty.
Precisely. But the deeper problem isn't just a refusal to ask. It's that human beings are catastrophically bad at knowing what to ask for.
Oh, we suffer from a severe lack of imagination. The metaphor used in the source material is perfect. We approach the architect of the infinite cosmos, an entity offering us the structural secrets of reality, and we throw a tantrum because we are demanding the equivalent of a plastic toy car and a piece of chocolate.
Yes. To illustrate the profound failure of human petition, we could look at the classical parable involving the powerful Abbasid Caliph, Harun Rashid, and his trusted vizier.
I love this story. So the caliph, possessing wealth and power that spans continents, summons his vizier during a moment of supreme generosity. He tells the vizier, "Ask me for absolutely anything you desire, and it shall be granted."
Right. And the standard human operating procedure in this scenario is to ask for a tangible, massive byproduct of the caliph's power.
Yeah, a chest overflowing with uncut jewels.
Yeah.
A fertile province to rule autonomously. A sprawling palace complex.
But the vizier understands the mechanics of power and proximity. Instead of requesting a byproduct, he looks at the caliph and requests the essence. He says, "I ask only for your continued love and favor."
The caliph is surprised, obviously. He is offering kingdoms, and the vizier asks for an emotion. But the vizier's logic is flawlessly pragmatic, isn't it?
It really is. He says, "If I possess a chest of gold, I only have gold. But if I possess your love, I possess everything. The gold, the provinces, the armies, they all belong to you. If you love me, your entire kingdom is inherently open to me."
This parable decodes the philosophy of dua, or prayer. When human beings engage in highly specific material petitions, we are demanding byproducts.
Yes, we're treating the ultimate reality as a vending machine. We put in the coin of our prayer, and we expect this specific plastic toy to drop out.
This resonates so deeply with the human experience for me. Think about the agony we put ourselves through over specific outcomes. You stay awake at night, consumed by anxiety, begging the universe for a specific promotion at work, or for a specific romantic relationship to materialize.
Right, you're convinced that this specific outcome is the ultimate necessary good for your life.
And when the door slams shut and you don't get the job or the relationship ends, you feel as though the universe has completely abandoned you.
But time is the great revealer.
Exactly. 5 years later, you realize that the company you wanted to work for was a toxic nightmare, or that the relationship would have destroyed you. You were begging for a disaster, convinced it was a blessing.
Because we are trapped in the immediate moment, we're entirely blind to the long-term reality of the whole.
Yeah.
Therefore, the highest manifestation of prayer is not presenting a heavily curated shopping list of demands to the cosmos.
It's requesting alignment with the source itself. It is asking for the essence, knowing that the necessary byproducts will naturally follow that alignment.
And failing to understand this proximity is what the framework defines as modern idolatry. The Arabic term is shirk.
Now, when we hear idolatry, we imagine Bronze Age societies offering grain-to-stone statues. We think we are far evolved past that.
But modern idolatry is far more insidious because it is entirely psychological. It is the act of treating the divine as distant, corporate, and transactional.
We envision God as a CEO residing in a locked office on the 100th floor of a massive skyscraper while we are toiling in the basement mailroom.
So we assume we need to fill out requisition forms. We think we need intermediaries, middle managers, or specialized rituals to get our request to the top floor. We view the divine as an entity that must be persuaded or informed of our suffering.
Completely forgetting the profound Quranic assertion that the divine is closer to you than your jugular vein. The Turkish phrasing, "Şah damarı," is incredibly visceral.
It is. The jugular is the biological conduit of life. If it's severed, consciousness ends in seconds. You literally cannot get closer to a human being than the blood pumping into their brain.
So to treat an entity that intimate as a distant CEO is the ultimate insult to the architecture of reality.
Exactly. Therefore, prayer is not an act of data transmission. God does not need to be updated on your employment status.
Right.
Prayer is defined as the brain of worship. It is the conscious, deliberate act of tuning the flawed, limited human will to the frequency of the infinite, universally merciful will. You are not changing the mind of the cosmos. You are preparing your own architecture to safely receive the manifestation of Rahim.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of this deep dive. We have laid out a universe built on infinite mercy, mathematical grace, and intimate sustenance. But we have to look out the window.
Yeah, the reality of the world.
We live in a world saturated with horrific violence, agonizing disease, and catastrophic natural disasters. If the foundational physics of reality is pure mercy, how does this framework explain the sheer volume of suffering?
The problem of evil. It is the crucible in which any theological or philosophical framework either hardens into truth or shatters into delusion.
It's the ultimate test.
And the argument presented here does not evade the brutality of the world, but it radically recontextualizes the nature of evil, anchoring its premise in the 12th verse of the chapter of Enoch.
The verse translates to, "He has prescribed mercy upon himself. It's a binding decree of the divine nature."
And the critical observation is what is absent from the decree. The divine did not prescribe wrath as a foundational rule. It did not prescribe punishment or vengeance as an inherent structural necessity. Only mercy is prescribed.
Which leads to a claim that is very, very difficult for the human mind to process. Everything in existence is fundamentally, essentially good.
Yes.
Evil is not a primary structural force. It doesn't exist as an independent entity in the way gravity or light exists.
Evil is categorized strictly as a secondary effect. To use a philosophical analogy, evil is a shadow.
The shadow has no mass, no energy, and no independent existence. It's simply the byproduct of an object blocking the light.
Exactly. In this framework, the shadow of evil is always caused by human misapplication, incomplete biological or spiritual development, or a necessary mechanism of testing.
Okay, let's ground this in the specific examples used in the source material, because they force us to rethink how we assign moral value to the physical world. Let's start with the biological example. The pig.
Right.
Within Islamic jurisprudence, consuming pork is strictly forbidden. It is haram. So the logical trap is set. If God only creates good, why did God create an inherently evil animal?
And the resounding answer is that the pig is not evil. Assigning moral malice to an animal is a failure of ecological understanding.
A pig is a biological marvel.
It is. It's a highly efficient, perfectly designed scavenger. In the wild, pigs clear away carrion, root through the soil, and prevent the spread of decay and disease in their ecosystems. In their design and function, they are a pure, unadulterated ecological good.
The evil, then, is entirely located in the human misapplication of the creation. The harm only manifests when a human being circumvents the divine restriction and consumes the animal, misusing its purpose. The animal is innocent. The shadow of evil is cast by human action.
But an animal is a relatively simple example. The framework scales this logic up to address catastrophic planetary events. It fundamentally redefines natural disasters, specifically earthquakes, stripping them of their perceived malice.
This one is tough. When a city is flattened by an earthquake, the immediate human reaction is to view the earth as a hostile, murderous force. We view the shaking ground as an aggressive attack.
Yes, but applying the lens of structural mercy requires us to look at the geology.
Right.
The Earth is a dynamic, living system driven by immense internal heat. The tectonic plates that make up the crust are in constant motion, driven by convection currents in the mantle. As they grind against each other, they build up incalculable amounts of kinetic stress.
And the lecture utilizes a highly relatable domestic metaphor here. The earthquake is the pressure valve on a pressure cooker. The Turkish phrase is "Düdüklü tencerenin düdüğü."
Exactly. If you are boiling water in a sealed pressure cooker and that little metal valve on top gets blocked, the internal pressure will eventually exceed the tensile strength of the metal, and the entire pot will violently explode, destroying everything in the kitchen.
The tectonic plates are the planetary pressure cooker. If the Earth did not possess the mechanism of earthquakes to periodically release that built-up kinetic stress, the structural integrity of the entire planet would be compromised.
Furthermore, tectonic activity, the churning and splitting of the crust, is the engine that pushes vital minerals up to the topsoil, sustaining global agriculture. It drives the creation of thermal springs and regulates the atmospheric cycles.
So an earthquake is not an act of planetary aggression. It is a vital biological necessity. It is the Earth actively working to prevent its own destruction and sustain the biosphere. The physical mechanism of the earthquake is, objectively, a mercy to all life on the planet.
Exactly. The mechanism is pure good. So where does the catastrophic evil originate? The argument places the responsibility squarely on human arrogance and greed.
The disaster does not occur because the Earth released its necessary pressure.
No.
The disaster occurs because human beings chose to build dense, heavy, unyielding concrete structures directly on top of fault lines, often on soft alluvial soil instead of anchoring to bedrock.
We ignore the geological reality to save money, to maximize real estate, or out of sheer hubris, assuming we can pave over the Earth's pressure valves without consequence.
And when the Earth inevitably breathes, when it takes its necessary action to survive, our cheap, arrogant structures collapse and crush us. The text makes a chillingly pragmatic statement. The Earth is simply taking its rights back.
We cannot blame the pressure valve for destroying the kitchen if we're the ones who decided to build our house inside the pressure cooker.
This recontextualization extends even to biblical scale narratives of divine punishment, doesn't it? The deluge of Noah, universally understood as the ultimate act of divine wrath, is reframed entirely within the paradigm of mercy.
Yes. The text describes the flood not as an angry deity drowning a planet out of spite, but as the Earth taking an ablution, performing a necessary ritual cleansing to wash away an overwhelming accumulation of spiritual and societal toxicity.
But, we must acknowledge the sheer emotional weight of what we're discussing. Analyzing tectonic plates and ecological balance is a sterile academic exercise until you apply it to a grieving parent.
It is.
This is where I have to push back with everything I have because the intellectual argument feels insufficient against the raw reality of human grief. I understand the mechanics of the pressure valve. I understand that the Earth must release stress.
Right.
But how do you stand in the rubble of a collapsed building and look at a parent who has just pulled the lifeless body of their child from the concrete and say, this event was an act of infinite cosmic mercy? It feels cruel. It feels deeply disconnected from the horror of the loss.
It is the most devastating, agonizing question a human consciousness can formulate. And any philosophy that attempts to gloss over that pain with hollow platitudes is entirely useless. The framework does not dismiss the agony of the parent. The grief is real and necessary. But the philosophical synthesis of this horrific reality relies entirely on the distinction between the part and the whole.
We are trapped in the part.
We are severely localized beings. Our entire frame of reference is a biological lifespan of perhaps 80 years. We perceive time strictly linearly. When an infant dies in an earthquake, our perspective, the part, sees only the violent termination of potential.
We mourn the 80 years of earthly experience that were stolen. We see the immediate agony of the parents.
We are looking at a single dark pixel on a massive screen and determining that the entire image is black.
But the divine perspective, the whole, operates outside of linear time. It sees the eternal continuum of the soul.
To illustrate the profound difference between the part and the whole, the text deploys a radical thought experiment regarding tyranny and the nature of consequence. It uses the archetype of absolute corruption in the Quranic tradition. Pharaoh.
Pharaoh represents the zenith of human arrogance. He enslaved millions, murdered children to preserve his power, and declared himself a god. He is the ultimate manifestation of earthly evil.
Now project the narrative forward into the afterlife. Imagine Pharaoh standing in the eternal reality, fully exposed to the cosmic consequences of his atrocities. The suffering he caused, the corruption of his own soul, the eternal weight of his tyranny, it is all realized. In that moment of absolute, horrifying clarity, imagine if the divine were to offer him a retroactive choice.
A choice regarding his timeline.
Yes. The divine asks Pharaoh, you are facing the eternal consequence of the tyrant you chose to become. Would you rather have lived that life of power and face this reality? Or would you rather I had sent a disease or an earthquake and taken your life when you were a sinless, innocent infant in your crib?
Oh, wow. If Pharaoh fully comprehends the eternal consequence of his corruption, he would absolutely, desperately wish he had died as an infant. He would view a childhood death not as a tragedy, but as the ultimate saving grace.
From the perspective of the eternal soul, from the perspective of the whole dying before you have the capacity to irreparably corrupt your essence, is an act of profound protection.
So when we weep over the death of a child in a disaster, we are weeping for the part. We are weeping for the loss of earthly time.
Exactly. We are incapable of seeing what timeline was aborted, what spiritual corruption was avoided, or how that innocent soul is perfectly preserved in the infinite reality.
It requires a total, humbling surrender of our demand to understand the mechanics of the universe right now. It is the realization that demanding the cosmos conform to what makes sense within our 80-year lifespan is the height of arrogance.
It really is.
We are standing 2 inches away from a sprawling, infinitely complex, pointillist painting. From our vantage point, all we see are chaotic, violent, seemingly ugly dots of paint. It looks like a disaster. But if we had the capacity to step back a mile, if we could see the whole, we would recognize that every single dot, even the blackest ones, was placed with absolute precision to create a masterpiece of mercy.
That is the ultimate unifying thesis of this deep dive. The underlying architecture of reality, despite the chaos and pain of our localized experience, is driven entirely by the gravity of Er-Rahman.
Man, let's take a breath and survey the immense territory we have covered today.
It's been a journey.
We started by examining the etymology of a single Arabic word, discovering that its roots in the concept of a womb reframe the universe as an environment of unearned nourishment.
We explored the linguistic mathematics of the elif-nun suffix, realizing that the word Rahman encodes an algorithm of compound infinity deliberately designed to annihilate human despair and ego.
We deconstructed the self-preservation masking as empathy in our own hearts, contrasting it with the divine mercy that creates existence out of a void. We walked with Abdullah bin Mubarak, learning that true worship is actionable grace, sacrificing the ritual to save the vulnerable.
We analyze the philosophy of prayer, realizing that treating the divine like a distant CEO and begging for material byproducts is a tragic misunderstanding of our intimate proximity to the source of all reality.
And finally, we confronted the problem of evil, redefining the violent tremors of our planet as vital pressure valves, and recognizing that our inability to reconcile tragedy is a flaw of our limited, localized perspective, not a flaw in the cosmic design.
It is an overwhelming amount of conceptual weight to carry.
It truly is. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final practical provocation to chew on as you go about your week.
Because we are still living in the messy, localized reality of the part.
Exactly, we can't escape it. The text suggests that if the veil were pulled back and we truly comprehended the sheer blinding scale of the mercy operating behind the scenes, the psychological shock would be too great. We would want to cross over to the eternal reality immediately just to witness it fully.
But you are here. You are navigating the friction of daily life.
So I want you to think about your biggest current source of frustration. Focus on the job loss that pulled the rug out from under you. Think about the relationship that shattered or the opportunity that violently slammed shut in your face.
Apply the physics of Casaby to that failure.
If the foundational structural physics of the universe is an active gravitational mercy designed specifically to attract you toward your ultimate eternal good, what if that closed door isn't a punishment?
What if that agonizing failure is actually the tectonic pressure valve going off in your life?
What if the rejection that is causing you so much pain today is the exact mechanism preventing your specific world from exploding, forcefully steering you away from a disaster you didn't even know was coming, and pointing you toward a reality you don't yet have the imagination to ask for?
That is the active, transformative perspective of Er-Rahman.
Thank you for joining us on this incredibly expansive deep dive. Keep questioning the surface level of the world around you. Look for the underlying mechanics, and we will catch you on the next one.
So this source material explores the Islamic theological concept of Er-Rahman, diving deeply into the linguistic, philosophical, and practical implications of infinite divine mercy.
Right. It's an incredibly rich piece.
It really is, and because the text is already remarkably strong and, philosophically dense, we're going to bypass the basics entirely and just jump right into high-level structural and thematic refinements. We want to maximize the impact of these profound ideas.
Absolutely. There is so much potential here to elevate what's already on the page.
Exactly. So let's start with pacing, because when you're dealing with dense theological concepts, pacing is basically everything.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that brings us to how the historical anecdotes are utilized within the text, specifically the one about Abdullah bin Mubarak.
Right, the Hajj journey.
Yeah, because, if the audience has already deeply engaged with the systematic philosophical breakdown of Rahman versus Rahim, doesn't dropping a lengthy historical story right there kind of risk breaking the intellectual momentum?
It does, yeah.
It feels a bit like we've stepped out of a high-level philosophy seminar into a campfire story, and it takes a while to find our way back to the main thesis,
The narrative pacing significantly slows down during the extended historical anecdote, which risks diluting the immediate impact of the core theological arguments.
Yeah, I definitely felt myself losing the thread there.
Well, the weakness is that the story of Abdullah bin Mubarak and the orphan children, while it's, emotionally resonant,
very emotional, yeah.
it's lengthy and somewhat structurally disconnected from the immediate preceding discussion of Rahman, which is inherent mercy, and Rahim, which is mercy in action.
Right, because of all the setup it takes.
Exactly. Because the procedural details of the Hajj journey and the interactions with the servant are drawn out so much, it creates this massive structural detour.
You just forget what you were supposed to be learning.
You do. The listener completely loses sight of the systematic breakdown of divine attributes that the piece had so successfully built up just before that.
But I understand the instinct to include it, though. Like, if we strip away the historical narrative completely, we risk losing the humanity of the piece. The theology might become too abstract.
Right. We don't want to lose the emotional core.
No, but we don't need the travel itinerary, right?
No, definitely not. So the suggestion for improvement here is to weave the narrative much tighter into the philosophical framework by explicitly using it to demonstrate the bridge between human and divine mercy, rather than presenting it as a standalone historical tangent.
Oh, okay. So it needs to work directly for the argument?
Exactly.
And for concrete examples on how to do that, you could trim the procedural details of the caravan journey entirely.
Just cut the logistics.
Yes. And focus directly on the emotional climax, the dead bird and the orphan children, as a direct, real-world reflection of Rahman inspiring human action.
I love that. Starting closer to the climax makes it so much punchier.
It really does. And you can take it a step further. You could bookend the story with the earlier concept of human need, or iftikhar.
Oh, right, the text unpacked that a few pages prior.
Yeah, so frame Mubarak's sudden change of heart as an example of recognizing ultimate need, which shows how divine mercy overrides formalized human ritual.
Wow, that changes how you read the anecdote entirely. It becomes a proof of concept.
Right, it acts as a structural pillar. And for placement, you'd want to place the story immediately after explaining the difference between Rahman and Rahim.
Okay, so it sits right there in the philosophical build-up.
Yes, and you explicitly cast the orphan children as the recipients, the merhum, and the sheikh as the actor reflecting divine action. So the story acts as a live-action diagram of the theology rather than a break from it.
That's brilliant. It perfectly bridges the pacing gap and it keeps the structural momentum going.
Exactly.
Which actually connects perfectly to my next point. Because if we're talking about connection and momentum, the author introduces this beautiful metaphor for exactly that.
The kazibe metaphor.
Yes, the concept of kazibe, or gravity and attraction. I mean, the text introduces this beautiful idea of spiritual gravity, keeping electrons in orbit, planets in motion, and drawing humans to prayer.
Such a strong image.
It is, but then it largely abandons it. I mean, isn't that like handing the audience a master key to the universe, but only using it to open one door? Like, why not use it to unlock the rest of the arguments?
The profound metaphor linking divine mercy to physical gravity is incredibly compelling, but is currently underexplored in its application to the rest of the theological framework.
Underexplored is definitely the word. It caused real friction for me as a reader.
I mean, the weakness here is that the material brilliantly introduces Kazabe as the secret of the universe, equating it to divine mercy, right?
Yeah, which is amazing.
But then, as the text moves into these deep discussions about existence versus non-existence and the nature of prayer or dua, this rich scientific spiritual analogy is just left behind.
It just reverts to standard theological phrasing.
Exactly. And this results in a missed opportunity to unify the entire piece under one unforgettable central image.
When you set up a lens that powerful, the audience instinctively wants to look through it for the rest of the piece. Switching back feels like a downgrade.
It does. So the suggestion for improvement is to anchor the entire latter half of the piece around this gravity metaphor, using it as the primary vehicle to explain the more complex theological concepts like creation and human supplication.
Okay, let's workshop how that looks in practice. Like when discussing how Rahman turns non-existence into existence, which is a really tough concept to explain clearly.
Right, it's very abstract.
If we use the metaphor, you could describe that process through the lens of gravity, right? Like, it is the ultimate gravitational pull of divine mercy drawing being out of the void.
Yes, that gives creation immense physical weight. And we can do the exact same thing for the concept of dua, or prayer.
Oh, totally. Because right now, it just feels a bit conventional.
Right. So you reframe the concept of dua not just as asking for things, but as the human consciousness actively aligning with this spiritual gravity.
I see. Much like a planet finding its proper life-sustaining orbit.
Exactly. That makes it active rather than passive. And instead of simply stating, the traditional line that prayer is the brain of worship.
Which kind of undersells the point, honestly.
It does. So instead, describe a lack of prayer as a soul losing its gravitational tether to the divine, drifting aimlessly into the void of forgetting Allah.
Oh, wow. That makes forgetting Allah sound so visceral, like a terrifying cosmic untethering. It raises the stakes so much higher.
It really does, and it unifies the entire back half of the critique under that one single powerful image.
Okay, so building on that idea of cosmic gravity and perfect order, this naturally leads to the text's discussion of what happens when that order feels disruptive or painful to humans.
Right. Which brings up the handling of suffering, natural disasters, theodicy.
Exactly, the classic theodicy problem. But I have to say, when the text tries to justify earthquakes or venomous snakes, it suddenly sounds like a An ecology textbook defending natural selection.
Yeah, talking about tectonic plates and all that.
Right. Mentioning tectonic stress and pest control rather than theological mercy. Doesn't this utilitarian, almost scientific defense actually weaken the spiritual majesty of Er-Rahman that the author worked so hard to establish?
The rationalization of natural disasters and worldly suffering relies on somewhat conventional, utilitarian apologetics that feel tonally mismatched with the highly original exploration of divine mercy presented earlier.
Tonally mismatched is putting it lightly. I got whiplash.
Well, the weakness is that when addressing the problem of evil, specifically pigs, snakes, earthquakes, and hell, the material shifts into a very defensive tone.
Right, it starts justifying their existence biologically.
Exactly. Explaining that snakes eat pests or that earthquakes relieve tectonic stress is a utilitarian defense. This pragmatic approach undercuts the earlier, far more majestic definition of Rahman as an unconditional, uncaused mercy that transcends human logic.
It basically shrinks a massive theological concept down to basic biology and geology.
It does.
It feels like trying to explain the emotional impact of a symphony by listing the acoustic friction of the violin strings. You miss the spiritual point of the music.
That's a perfect analogy for what's happening here. So the suggestion for improvement is to elevate the defense of worldly suffering by tying it directly back to the core premise that everything is essentially good because it is encompassed by mercy.
Okay, so stay away from the science completely.
Yes, focus strictly on the spiritual limitations of human perception, rather than the physical utility of these phenomena.
Okay, so for a concrete example, instead of explaining earthquakes purely as a geological necessity,
frame them entirely through the lens of human limitation. Argue that our inability to see the whole, the butun, makes us misinterpret the macro mercy of the cosmos.
So the disaster is just a symptom of the narrowness of human sight. We lack the vantage point.
Exactly. And when discussing hell, the draft refers to it as an intensive care unit, which is a brilliant, striking phrase.
I love that phrase, yeah.
But to make it work, expand on this exclusively through the lens of divine healing. Contrast it with the human concept of punitive justice, to show how even in ultimate judgment, Rahman acts to purify rather than merely punish.
Right, because an intensive care unit involves suffering, but its sole purpose is the restoration of life. That keeps it deeply theological.
It protects the thematic core, yes.
And what about the zoological examples, like the snakes and pigs? Do we just cut them?
You don't have to cut them, but you should condense the zoological examples into a single, tighter philosophical point about mahurikala, or the purpose of creation.
Oh, okay, so arguing that what we perceive as evil is merely a human misalignment with divine intent.
Exactly. Completely avoiding getting bogged down in the literal environmental benefits of the animals.
That preserves the awe the rest of the text works so hard to build. You know, keeping the reader at 30,000 feet instead of dragging them down into agricultural pest control.
Right, it's all about maintaining that intellectual altitude.
So, just to summarize for the author, the core takeaways of this critique are, first, tightening the structural integration of the historical narrative so it serves as a live-action proof of the theology.
Yes, no standalone tangents.
Right. Second, sustaining that brilliant Kazabi gravity metaphor throughout the entire piece to explain things like prayer and creation.
Keep the master key in the ignition.
Exactly. And finally, elevating the defense of suffering from utilitarian ecology to profound theology, focusing entirely on human perceptual limits.
Implementing these specific, actionable suggestions will really take an already deep and fascinating theological exploration and make it a truly unified, unforgettable piece of writing.
I couldn't agree more. So, we warmly invite you to revise the text using these lenses, and please submit your work back in again for further feedback in the future. We'd love to see where this goes.
It was a pleasure digging into this one.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for the critique today.
Welcome to the debate. You know, when you look up a word like gravity in a physics textbook, there's this comforting, almost cold universality to it. Like, if you hold an apple and let it go, it falls.
Right.
The equation doesn't care if you're a saint or a sinner. It doesn't care whether you are profoundly aware of gravitational waves or completely ignorant of them.
It is just a foundational mechanic of reality.
Yeah, it's a mechanical constant. It just is. I mean, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't judge.
Exactly. But when we transition into theology, specifically when we talk about divine mercy, we usually expect something entirely different, don't we? We expect emotion. We expect an intervention that suspends the harsh rules of the universe, rather than expecting mercy to be the rule itself.
Right. We want the apple to be caught before it hits the ground. That's what we usually call a miracle or a mercy.
That's the traditional framing, sure. But today, we are exploring a profound exposition on the nature of divine mercy that turns that expectation completely on its head. We're looking at a cosmological framework drawn from a lecture by Mustafa İslamoğlu, which focuses on the Islamic attribute of God, Er-Rahman.
Often translated as the infinitely merciful, right?
Exactly. And our central question today is this: can all cosmic and human phenomena, including natural disasters, worldly suffering, and even divine punishment, be accurately categorized as expressions of absolute divine mercy? Or does this cosmological framework stretch the definition of mercy to the point of, well, conceptual incoherence?
It's a huge question.
It is. I will argue that framing Rahman as a foundational cosmological force successfully resolves the problem of evil by revealing the merciful necessity behind apparent destruction.
And I will counter that redefining catastrophes and punishment as mercy completely dilutes the conceptual clarity of the term. I mean, it severs it from the very human intuition of compassion that this framework claims as our necessary starting point.
So to begin, we have to rethink what Er-Rahman actually means in this specific context. It's not a localized, reactive human emotion. It is the absolute bedrock of existence.
Okay, but how does that work practically?
Think about the philosophical origin of being. Human mercy requires an existing subject to receive it, right? I can only show mercy to someone who is already there, standing in front of me.
Sure.
But divine mercy, Rahman, is the primal force that bridges absolute nothingness, what the text refers to as yukluk, into tangible existence, into varlik.
So the act of creation itself is the baseline mercy?
Yes, exactly. Just by existing, you are experiencing Rahman. And the framework makes a critical linguistic distinction here between two closely related attributes, Rahman and Rahim.
Right, the distinction is key.
It is. Rahman applies to the essence of God and encompasses all of creation simultaneously. It's ambient, you know? It covers believers and non-believers, the wolf and the sheep, the rose and the thorn. It is a universal constant, much like the gravity we mentioned earlier.
And Rahim is the more specific one.
Exactly. Rahim is action-oriented and specific. It's the targeted mercy directed toward believers or specific contexts. But because Rahman is the baseline, the architecture of reality itself, that means every single process in the universe, even the friction, the breakdown, the decay of things, is fundamentally rooted in a structural mercy, because it creates a universe where life is actually possible.
Look, that is undeniably a breathtaking philosophical premise. It really scales theology up to the cosmic level. And I want to acknowledge the beauty of starting this inquiry with the human experience.
It grounds it, yeah.
It does. The premise correctly identifies that if we try to comprehend the infinite nature of God directly, bypassing our own human experience, we just hit an intellectual dead end. We have to start with the observable, tangible human compassion we see in each other. But here is where I see us hitting a logical wall. And it's why I argue for definitional precision.
Which means what exactly in this context?
Well, if we are anchoring this cosmic idea in human experience, we have to look at how human mercy is actually defined.
Meaning the emotional components of it?
Yes, the visceral components. The framework itself defines human mercy using highly emotional concepts. It talks about rikhat, which is that physical feeling of your heart softening when you witness suffering. And it talks about tituf, which is the deep, empathetic compulsion to share in someone else's pain.
Right.
So my position is that if our foundation for understanding divine mercy is rooted in rikhat and tituf, tenderness and shared pain, we cannot logically stretch that exact same word to encompass literal, wide-scale destruction. Categorizing everything as mercy makes the concepts completely unfalsifiable.
I don't think it's unfalsifiable.
But it is. If a mother nursing a child is mercy, but a massive earthquake wiping out a whole city is also mercy, the word loses its moral and conceptual utility. It stops meaning compassion and just becomes a theological synonym for Well, everything that happens.
Okay, let's look at how the framework actually bridges that gap. Because it doesn't just arbitrarily slap the label of mercy onto a falling building. It explains the mechanics of how this works by equating mercy to a physical force.
The gravity metaphor?
Right. The concept used is kaziba, which literally translates to attraction or gravitational pull. The idea is that mercy is the kaziba of the universe. When you look at an atom, what holds the electrons to the nucleus?
Electromagnetic force.
Right. Physics gives it a name. But this cosmological view says the underlying essence of that force, the reason matter doesn't just fly apart into chaotic nothingness, is this foundational mercy. It's the gravity holding the moon in orbit around the Earth.
Okay, but...
Let me just finish this thought. Without this kazibe, this merciful cohesion, the universe instantly collapses back into yokluk, into non-existence. But, and here's where it scales, it is also the exact same force that acts as spiritual gravity, pulling human hearts toward prayer or pulling individuals toward acts of compassion. It's a unified theory of existence. The physical laws governing mass and the spiritual laws governing the soul are expressions of the exact same divine attribute.
I come at it from a different way. I think we need to be incredibly careful about blending physics and morality so seamlessly. I mean, conflating literal Newtonian gravity with mercy is a brilliant poetic metaphor, truly, but it's dangerous when we mistake it for theological mechanics.
Why is it dangerous?
Because gravity is an unconscious, unthinking physical law. It doesn't have intent. It doesn't have a conscience.
But doesn't an omnipotent creator imbue those laws with intent?
Through authorship, perhaps, but not in their execution. Can an unconscious physical law truly carry the moral weight of compassion? When a boulder dislodges from a cliff and falls on a hiker's head due to gravity, we don't look at the boulder and call the gravity merciful. We call it a tragic intersection of mass and acceleration.
Right, but
by turning mercy into a physical constant like gravity, you strip it of the relational, empathetic qualities, that te'atuf, the sharing of pain, that make it mercy in the first place. You're literally mechanizing compassion.
See, I don't believe it mechanizes compassion at all. Rather, it spiritualizes physics. Consider how the framework synthesizes these two domains through the historical story of Abdullah bin Mubarak. He was a renowned scholar en route to perform the Hajj.
Which is a huge physical undertaking.
Exactly. The Hajj is the ultimate physical and spiritual journey in Islam. It involves moving your physical body toward a specific gravitational center, the Kaaba. But along the way, he stops and witnesses a young girl retrieving a dead bird from a refuse pile.
A jarring image, to be sure.
Deeply jarring. So he investigates and finds out she is an orphan, feeding her starving siblings who haven't eaten in days. They are at the point where consuming a carcass has become a matter of sheer survival. So what does Abdullah bin Mubarak do?
He doesn't just feel bad for her.
No, he doesn't. He immediately cancels his Hajj. He gives every single coin of his travel funds to this destitute family, and his reasoning is profound. He says, this is the Hajj.
Meaning the act of charity superseded the physical pilgrimage?
Exactly. The lore even suggests that people claim to see him circumambulating the Kaaba that year, implying that his spiritual presence arrived where his physical body did not. What this illustrates is the mechanism of kaziba. The gravitational pull of his conscience, that rikat, was vastly more powerful than the physical requirement to walk to Mecca.
I see where you're going with this.
He was pulled toward those orphans by the exact same universal force that holds planets in orbit. It proves that physical and spiritual realities aren't separate domains operating on different rules. They are intertwined by the exact same force of Rahman.
That's a beautiful narrative. Really it is. But it actually highlights the exact flaw I'm pointing out. It underscores a fundamental difference in agency.
How so?
Because Abdullah bin Mubarak had a choice. He witnessed suffering, he experienced ritqat, his heart softened, and he exercised moral agency to intervene. Electrons orbiting a nucleus do not have a choice. Tectonic plates do not have a choice. When we map a profoundly moral act of human agency onto the deterministic physical laws, we risk undermining the very definition of morality.
I disagree. We're just seeing the macro.
We are calling the spinning of a rock compassion. Let's take this framework out of the realm of metaphor
and apply it to its absolute breaking point, the problem of systemic suffering and natural disasters. If everything is sustained by this merciful Dijazi, what is the mechanism that justifies the visceral horrors of the natural world?
While this is where the framework is arguably at its most robust, it addresses the problem of evil by insisting that evil is never in the essence of things. The terminology used is that evil is not in the the core, or the blueprint of creation. Evil only arises from human misuse, limitation, or, a failure to understand the broader ecosystem.
Give me an example of how that works in practice.
Take the pig. Culturally and theologically in Islam, the pig is associated with dietary prohibitions and is often viewed negatively. But the framework insists the pig is not inherently evil. Its essence is pure. Ecologically, it is a magnificent environmental cleaner, a mutsasham birchopchu.
Okay, sure. Ecologically, it has a purpose.
Right. Its creation is highly purposeful and merciful to the environment. Then, the framework scales this logic up to massive natural disasters, specifically earthquakes.
And how exactly is an earthquake not inherently destructive in its essence?
Because of the thermodynamic mechanics of a living planet, earthquakes are described as the Earth's safety valve. Think of a pressure cooker, a duduklu tenjure.
A pressure cooker, okay.
Yeah. As heat and pressure build up inside, the little whistle on top occasionally releases steam. If it didn't do that, the entire pot would explode, destroying everything in the kitchen, right?
Sure, basic physics.
The tectonic plates periodically releasing stress through earthquakes is that safety valve. If the Earth didn't shift and release this kinetic energy, the planet would literally tear itself apart from pent-up pressure, ending all biological life. Plus, this tectonic activity is the mechanism that recycles soil, replacing barren dirt with fertile ground and creating geothermal hot springs. The destruction is a localized friction that is absolutely, mathematically necessary for the macro survival of the planet.
Let's dig deeply into that pressure cooker analogy, because I think it exposes a massive vulnerability in this cosmological design. Imagine an architect who designs a towering residential skyscraper.
Okay.
This architect builds a structural system where, to prevent the building's foundation from spontaneously shattering, a few apartments on the lower floors must occasionally collapse, crushing the families inside.
That is a grim thought experiment.
But an accurate parallel. We might look at that human architect and say they were constrained by the laws of physics or material science. We might acknowledge it was a necessary engineering trade-off to keep the whole tower standing, but we would never, under any circumstances, call the crushing of those families mercy.
Because a human architect didn't have the power to alter the laws of physics.
Precisely. If God is the ultimate creator of the pressure cooker itself, he isn't constrained by thermodynamics. He authored thermodynamics. Why build tectonic stress into the system in the first place? Why design a universe that requires a violent kinetic release of energy that obliterates innocent lives?
Well,
labeling the resulting suffering, the collapsing buildings, the orphaned children, as mercy feels like retroactive justification. It feels like we are bending the word mercy to excuse the architect for designing a deadly building.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. No, wait, actually, I want to address the architectural design first before we get to the metaphysical implications.
Go ahead.
The framework answers this by looking at the requirements of a free-willed universe. The universe operates on Kev and Vifasat, formation and decay. A universe without friction, without tectonic stress, without gravity and mass, is a static universe. It is a frozen photograph. A universe with cause and effect is the only architecture where a meaningful, free-willed human existence is possible.
Even if I grant that a dynamic universe requires friction, it doesn't change the moral texture of the outcome.
But it shifts the moral responsibility. The framework explicitly states that the disaster aspect of an earthquake is often a result of humans not respecting the nature of creation. If we build shoddy concrete housing on soft alluvial soil instead of anchoring to bedrock, if we pave over floodplains so water has nowhere to go, the rain that was meant to be a baseline mercy becomes a deadly flood. The fault lies in human misalignment with reality. The earthquake is just the earth regulating itself according to the merciful laws of its design.
I fully understand the argument regarding human responsibility in urban planning. Corrupt contractors and poor zoning cause immense suffering.
Absolutely.
But that logic does not account for the innocent toddler who is crushed under that poorly poured concrete. Saying the earthquake was just the earth regulating itself offers zero moral comfort to the grieving parent, and more importantly, it utterly fails the framework's own foundational test.
Which test?
The human compassion test. Remember, we established at the beginning that we must understand God's mercy by looking at human rikut and tituv. If a human being intentionally triggered a localized earthquake that killed thousands in order to save the planet, we might call them a cold, calculating utilitarian. We would call them pragmatic, but our hearts would not soften toward them. We wouldn't call them merciful.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. One that moves us to the ultimate test of this entire cosmology, which is metaphysical punishment and the afterlife.
Oh, here we go.
Because if you can understand divine punishment through the lens of mercy, then the paradox of earthly suffering also resolves itself. The lecture anchors this in a very specific, powerful verse. Anam 12. Ketebe ala nefsihi rahmate. He has prescribed mercy upon himself.
Okay.
The theological fact here is staggering. God never prescribed wrath upon himself. Wrath is not his essence, it is not his core operating principle.
So how does a framework based entirely on mercy account for hell?
By viewing hell itself through the lens of Rahman. The framework describes hell not as a medieval torture chamber designed for divine retribution, but as a Yoan Bakum unité, an intensive care unit.
An intensive care unit of fire?
Cutting and immense pain. But the purpose of the ICU is never torture. The purpose is the preservation of life. Hell is presented as a spiritual ICU for souls that became so fundamentally diseased, so corrupted by their own tyranny and cruelty that they failed to heal on earth.
So the fire is medicine?
The fire is a severe, agonizing purification. It burns away the spiritual gangrene. Its ultimate mechanism is restorative, not purely punitive.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Let's look at another profound story from this very framework to see why this analogy shatters.
Sure.
The Prophet Muhammad is walking with his companions, and they see a mother desperately nursing a crying orphaned baby. She is frantic to comfort this child, pouring every ounce of her protective love into it. The Prophet points to her and says, God's mercy toward his servants is infinitely greater than the mercy of this mother toward this child.
A beautiful illustration of Talituf.
Yes, but how can we possibly reconcile the visceral, fiercely protective, gentle love of that nursing mother with the concept of an eternal intensive care unit of fire? Or let's take another example the framework uses, the Great Flood of Noah.
Right.
The text argues that the flood was merely the earth taking ablution, a cleansing, and that drowning all those people was actually a mercy to the sinners because it stopped them from accumulating more sins.
Which it did.
But calling a civilization-ending flood an ablution, or referring to hell as an intensive care unit, borders on Orwellian doublespeak. At what point does basic intellectual charity demand we simply look at reality and admit that some things are wrath, some things are purely destructive, and they are not disguised mercy?
Because admitting that fragments the absolute nature of the divine. If God is fundamentally Rahman, if mercy is the foundational architecture, then wrath can never be an independent force. It can only ever be a temporary instrument of that mercy.
An instrument of mercy that destroys cities.
You bring up the nursing mother. I completely agree it's an emotionally heavy contrast. But let's play out that scenario. What if that fiercely protective mother saw her toddler about to drink a bottle of deadly chemical solvent? What would she do?
She'd stop the child.
She wouldn't just stop the child gently. She would sprint across the room. She would aggressively tackle the child to the ground. She might inadvertently bruise the child's arm in the process, causing the child to scream in pain and terror.
Of course.
From the toddler's limited, localized perspective, this loving mother has suddenly transformed into a monster of arbitrary wrath. The child is experiencing trauma. But from the mother's elevated perspective, that violent tackle is the most intense, urgent expression of mercy possible.
But an earthly mother is constrained by time and physics. She has to tackle the child. An omnipotent God doesn't have to tackle anyone. He can just make the poison disappear.
But making the poison disappear removes consequence, which removes free will, which dismantles the entire purpose of the Varlik, the existence we discussed earlier. Let's look at the framework's example of Pharaoh.
Okay.
Pharaoh was a tyrant who drowned. If Pharaoh were asked in the afterlife, once the veil of reality was lifted,
Would you have preferred to die as an innocent baby rather than live decades to compound the horrific sins of a tyrant? What would he say?
I mean, presumably yes.
His soul would say yes. Taking his life, forcibly ending his reign, even through drowning in the sea, prevents the eternal compounding of his spiritual disease. We, observing these disasters, are the toddler crying over the bruised arm, utterly unable to see the spiritual poison we were saved from. The framework demands we admit that our epistemic lens is tiny. We only see a fragment of the timeline, not the cosmic whole.
Look, I understand the logic of the tackle, but that analogy strains under the weight of universal application. If every single tragedy, every tsunami, every childhood illness, every war is secretly a mother tackling a child away from poison, it requires a level of epistemic humility that crosses the line into a blind abdication of our own God-given reason.
Why is it an abdication of reason to admit we don't have all the variables?
Because the framework told us to use our human variables as the starting point. It told us to start with human writ, heart softening. When a flood wipes out a city, our human heart breaks. It shatters. It does not soften in quiet gratitude for the earth taking its ablution.
But that's just our limitation.
If an earthquake is mercy, if drowning is mercy, if hell is mercy, then the word mercy ceases to describe a specific, recognizable moral quality. It merely becomes a theological stamp of approval we place on reality post hoc. It becomes a circular tautology. God does it, God is merciful, therefore whatever happens is, by definition, merciful. If the framework demands we abandon our foundational moral intuitions to make the cosmic math work out, it has failed its own premise.
I don't believe it asks us to abandon our intuitions at all. I think it elevates them to a higher dimensional understanding. To summarize my position, I view this cosmological framework of Er-Rahman as an absolute triumph of theological reasoning.
It is undeniably ambitious.
It is. Because by defining mercy not as a fleeting, reactive sentiment, but as the fundamental, structural physics of reality, a force that pulls us from nothingness into existence, sustains the intricate mechanics of our world, and occasionally forcibly corrects us through tectonic shifts or floods for the macro-level good, we find a universe that is completely devoid of indifference. We find a cosmos deeply rooted in a profound, albeit sometimes terrifying and incomprehensible grace. It demands that we trust the architect of the pressure cooker, knowing that the Qazibe, the gravitational pull of mercy, is the only thing keeping the structure from collapsing into the void.
And, well, to summarize my stance, while I recognize that this lecture offers a breathtakingly ambitious, deeply unified vision of the cosmos, I believe it ultimately overreaches, redefining every conceivable outcome, including horrific systemic suffering, mass natural disasters, and the intensive care unit of hell, as mercy risks alienating the very human conscience that the text relies on to define the word in the first place. If everything is mercy, the word risks meaning absolutely nothing.
Right, the linguistic critique.
Exactly. We cannot start our theological journey by defining mercy through the desperate, gentle tears of a nursing mother, only to end the journey by using that exact same word to justify the violent drowning of a civilization. The tension between human compassion and cosmic harshness is profoundly real, and attempting to linguistically engineer that tension away does a grave disservice to the visceral reality of human suffering.
This is undeniably a deeply complex intersection of cosmology, linguistics, and the very stark reality of human pain.
It absolutely is. And while we may fundamentally disagree on where the boundaries of language snap under pressure, viewing the universe through this specific lens, attempting to see the gravity of compassion underlying all matter and spirit, is an exercise that stretches the human mind in necessary, even if uncomfortable ways.
It forces us to grapple with what we think we know. The source material certainly offers no easy answers, and it demands deep, continuous reflection. We will leave it to you, the listener, to weigh the limits of human comprehension against the vastness of these divine attributes. Because at the end of the day, whether you see the apple falling as a product of blind, indifferent physics or as the deliberate gravitational pull of divine mercy, it still hits the ground.
The lingering question is whether you believe there is a hand waiting to catch it in the end.
Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.
This is the brief on the Islamic concept of Ar-Rahman. Drawing from a theological lecture by scholar Mustafa İslamoğlu, we're exploring Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, not as a simple emotion, but as the fundamental force that holds the universe together, which completely changes how we view reality. We're going to define what this divine mercy actually is, contrast it with a related concept called Ar-Rahim to show how it works, and then apply it to the hardest question of all, the existence of natural disasters. First, let's look at this mercy. You know, human mercy is often emotional, pity-based, or kind of transactional. But divine mercy is the literal gravitational pull bringing things from non-existence into existence, holding atoms and planets in their orbits. Think of this divine mercy not as a fleeting human feeling of pity, but as the literal laws of physics, the gravitational glue keeping the entire cosmos from collapsing. Second, we have to distinguish Ar-Rahman from Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman is an absolute, universal mercy that covers all creation unconditionally, good and bad alike. Ar-Rahim, however, is a dynamic, responsive mercy directed at those who specifically seek it out. If Ar-Rahim is the sun warming the entire earth indiscriminately, Ar-Rahim is the magnifying glass, focusing that light specifically on those who ask for it. Finally, how does this absolute mercy explain the problem of evil and natural calamities? Well, calamities aren't actually evil in their essence. They're necessary acts of cosmic maintenance. An earthquake is essentially the steam valve on a pressure cooker, preventing the Earth's tectonic plates from exploding. The true tragedy only happens because humans stubbornly choose to build their cities right on top of the release valve. Ultimately, understanding Ar-Rahman forces us to reframe mercy, taking it from a soft human emotion and elevating it to the rigorous, structural foundation of reality itself.
This is the brief on the concept of Er-Rahman. If you think you know what mercy means, get ready to rethink the whole shebang, because Er-Rahman is the Islamic theological concept of infinite, divine mercy that completely flips our perspective on existence, hardship, and the universe. First, we have to look at the difference between human and divine mercy. You know, human mercy is basically a gravitational pull triggered by seeing someone in need, and it's often kind of transactional because we either want a reward or just fear the same fate. Divine mercy, though, expects absolutely nothing in return and doesn't even require a subject to exist yet. So what does this actually mean for us? Well, human mercy is a transaction, whereas divine mercy is the literal womb, the initial spark pulling existence right out of nothingness. Second, let's break down Ar-Rahman versus Er-Rahim. Both mean merciful, but they function totally differently. Er-Rahman is God's unchanging universal essence, covering literally everything in creation, from saints to tyrants. Rahim, however, is an action-oriented, extra layer of mercy specifically directed toward believers. Think of Er-Rahman as the basic operating system that keeps every single device running, while Rahim is the specialized VIP software update for those who log in. Finally, understanding Er-Rahman helps us process hardship. Now wait, no way how can a devastating earthquake possibly be a mercy? Because Er-Rahman is universal, it constantly balances the grand scheme of things. Evil is just our misuse of creation. Earthquakes actually release tectonic stress so the earth doesn't explode, acting as the essential whistling pressure valve on a pressure cooker, keeping our planet alive. True divine mercy isn't just about pity. It is the fundamental structural foundation of the entire universe. This is the brief on the Islamic concept of Er-Rahman. So we're breaking down a lecture by scholar Mustafa İslamoğlu to see how this specific name of God, the most merciful, completely flips our everyday understanding of mercy upside down and actually explains why the universe exists. First, we gotta separate human mercy from divine mercy. You see, our mercy is super reactive, right? We help someone out of pity. But divine mercy, Er-Rahman, doesn't need a victim. It's the very act of bringing something from non-existence into existence. Think of it like a tutor explaining a core concept. Human mercy is tossing a life preserver to someone drowning, but divine mercy is literally inventing both the ocean and the swimmer. Second, because it brings absolutely everything into existence, Er-Rahman is completely unconditional, applying to believers, non-believers, the good and the bad.
Imagine it as the foundational software or the gravitational pull of the universe. Without this constant force, atoms wouldn't hold together and nothing would exist. Finally, we kind of have to address the elephant in the room. You're probably asking, wait, if God is the ultimate mercy, how can natural disasters be merciful? Well, evil isn't in the essence of things, but in our limited perspective or human misuse. Earthquakes are just the Earth releasing tectonic stress to survive. The tragedy happens when we mistakenly build houses on a fault line. We only see a single pixel, while God sees the entire masterpiece. Ultimately, Er-Rahman isn't just about feeling pity, but is the ultimate unconditional creative force holding the universe together.
This is the brief on the Islamic concept of Er-Rahman and divine mercy. Today, we're going to look at the ancient Arabic name for God, Er-Rahman, and see how its deep meaning totally flips how we view the universe, our very existence, and yep, even natural disasters. First, you gotta realize this isn't just some warm, emotional feeling. It's literally a fundamental force of attraction that pulls things from non-existence right into reality. Think of it kind of like the physical law of gravity. Just as gravity keeps atoms glued together and planets locked in orbit, this boundless mercy is basically the gravitational pull holding existence itself together. Second, let's contrast this with a related term, Er-Rahim. Because Er-Rahman holds the whole universe together, it's a massive, universal mercy given to absolutely everything. Now wait, so this cosmic mercy applies to literally everyone, regardless of what they do? Well, yeah, it totally does. Good and bad, believer and non-believer alike. Er-Rahim, on the other hand, is a super specific, specialized mercy reserved just for believers. Finally, if this mercy covers everything, how on earth do we explain the bad stuff? Well, what we usually view as terrible suffering are actually expressions of this universal mercy meant to sustain the whole system. Take earthquakes, for instance. I know it sounds wild, but they act exactly like a steam release valve on a giant pressure cooker. If the Earth's tectonic plates didn't periodically release all that built-up stress, our planet would literally explode like a bomb. So it's a really harsh reality, for sure, but it's what keeps the Earth alive. The bottom line is that true mercy isn't always about human comfort. It's that profound, sometimes intense force that simply allows everything to exist. This is the brief on the Islamic concept of Er-Rahman and divine mercy. Today, we're going to look at the ancient Arabic name for God, Er-Rahman, and see how its deep meaning totally flips how we view the universe, our very existence, and yep, even natural disasters. First, you gotta realize this isn't just some warm, emotional feeling. It's literally a fundamental force of attraction that pulls things from non-existence right into reality. Think of it kind of like the physical law of gravity. Just as gravity keeps atoms glued together and planets locked in orbit, this boundless mercy is basically the gravitational pull holding existence itself together. Second, let's contrast this with a related term, Er-Rahim. Because Er-Rahman holds the whole universe together, it's a massive, universal mercy given to absolutely everything. Now wait, so this cosmic mercy applies to literally everyone, regardless of what they do? Well, yeah, it totally does. Good and bad, believer and non-believer alike. Er-Rahim, on the other hand, is a super specific, specialized mercy reserved just for believers. Finally, if this mercy covers everything, how on earth do we explain the bad stuff? Well, what we usually view as terrible suffering are actually expressions of this universal mercy meant to sustain the whole system. Take earthquakes, for instance. I know it sounds wild, but they act exactly like a steam release valve on a giant pressure cooker. If the Earth's tectonic plates didn't periodically release all that built-up stress, our planet would literally explode like a bomb. So it's a really harsh reality, for sure, but it's what keeps the Earth alive. The bottom line is that true mercy isn't always about human comfort. It's that profound, sometimes intense force that simply allows everything to exist.